Hello and welcome to Meet Our Ex Success Stories podcast. I'm coach and host Amanda Leah, and I'm here with a huge contributor in the animal-based and fat-burning community. He's a celebrity fitness trainer, podcast host, best-selling author, cancer conqueror, and creator of No Sugar, No Grains. He's also the man behind the film Fat, a documentary. Thanks so much for speaking with us, Vinnie Tortorich.
Thanks, Amanda. It's much better talking to you because well, it's not hard to be cuter than Sean Baker, but, then you tell me there was going to be this beautiful woman interviewing me. I was like, oh, here we go with Sean again. So thank you for doing this. And I'm going to start by interviewing you a little bit. How did you become a coach, or did you have a weight problem or any kind of health problems or anything? How did that work?
I love how you flip the switch.
What I do, right? Sorry.
That's okay. No, I didn't have any weight problems. I've been dealing with health issues. And so I started looking into what else could help deal with my health concerns. And thankfully, I found Sean Baker and learned about animal-based nutrition. But that's a great way to jump in to hear about you. I'd love to hear about your story. We'd all love to hear. So please tell us about your diet and your health before you began eating the way that you currently do.
Yeah, mine actually started in college. I went to Tulane University starting in 1981. And by my third year, I was in exercise physiology as a major and nutrition. And we spent a lot of time in that third year in the lab. And we had some of the people, collegiate track athletes, and we brought them in and we put them on a treadmill. And we hooked them up, it looked like a Gatorade commercial. We had the thing in their mouth collecting their what they were breathing out. We had all the EKG stuff on them, and we were pricking their fingers, doing a blood lactose at the same time, because this is what you do in labs. We were learning, right? And we had this guy was an 800 meter specialist, and those guys have a VO2 max that's just beyond, right? And we had him up there for, I don't know, I want to say 20 some odd minutes, 25 minutes. And I noticed that, we figured out that he had burned somewhere in the neighborhood of, I want to say 180 calories, 190 calories in 25, 29 minutes or whatever, until we got this guy to literally almost puke. That's what we would stop it when these guys were just, at the brink, right? And then we broke for lunch. And me and my lab partner, her name was Linda. I won't give her last name anymore. She became a physical therapist. And we were having lunch sitting on a bench right outside of the laboratory. And she pulled out a bag of M&Ms. Now, you're way too young to remember this. But M&Ms used to come in a bag about that big, right? They were tiny. There was no king size or super size or double, triple, half-pound bag of M&Ms. We were sane back in 1984. You got a bag about that big, right?
Yeah.
And the way you would do a bag of M&Ms is you'd shake a few out in your hand and you'd hand it to your partner as if you were passing a joint or something. And so she pours a few out in her hand and she hands the bag to me. I pour it and I put them in my mouth and I flip the bag over. And I'm reading the back of the bag, nutrition facts, which the one thing about nutrition facts is there are no facts in there, right?
True word.
So I went, huh. And whenever I go, huh, the person next to me goes, oh boy, here we go. Yeah, it's never a good thing for me to go, huh. And Linda goes, okay, what's up? I said, it says right here that there's like 178 calories in this bag of M&Ms. And she goes, so what? I said, so everything. She goes, I don't get it. What are you getting at? I said, Linda, we just had an athlete puking, a well-rounded athlete. In 29 minutes, he could not burn this bag of M&Ms. Or he just burned this bag of M&Ms. So you're trying to tell me a person going to a Jane Fonda was a big thing back then. Someone going to a Jane Fonda aerobics class, or someone jogging down the street trying to lose extra calories, we couldn't get an athlete to 200 calories. And this bag of M&Ms would negate that 30 minutes or that 26 minutes. Boom. And she was like, yeah, but that's the only way you can lose weight. I said, it can't possibly be. And that was the beginning of my journey. That was when I started thinking that calorie in, calorie out is never the right answer. But I didn't have the right answer. I just knew that that wasn't it. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's really interesting. So how did you start to figure out what it was? And were you dealing with any health conditions prior to, at this point, yourself?
No, I was a collegiate athlete myself. I played football, junior high, high school, and college. I went to school on a football scholarship. At the time, I weighed 225 pounds. I'm only 6 feet tall, and my waist was 30 inches. You know, I was built like the proverbial brick shit house. You know, so it wasn't, you know, I didn't have any health concerns whatsoever. But there were clues along the way, and it took me years because I'm not very smart, but I have a photographic memory. And if you ever heard my podcast, that photographic memory would really bother you because nothing is off the table with me. And I remember my freshman year in college in 1981, I was taking a class in nutrition, and the professor said that fat is the #1 nutrient that your body can, you know, your body needs fat to live. Now, there were no fat people in 1981, right? So I was looking at fat as just being a macronutrient that he said our brains need it, our bodies need it to function. It's used for all of these different things, right? So I wrote down in my notebook, fat, very important, asterisk. Need fat to live. Brain is made of fat. All of these great things. And a couple of weeks passed. Same professor was talking about the need for carbohydrates. You know, we need it to, you know, to move and to run. Our body uses it as fuel. So I went, wait a minute. Flipping back in my notebook and flipping back and flipping back. And at some point I raised my hand and everybody in the class went, oh, because I was that guy. Mm-hmm. You know, they were there just to get an A because they were going off to medical school. And I was there like Gomer Pyle. You don't even know who Gomer Pyle is. But I'm like, hey. And they're going, oh boy, here we go again with Mr. Tangent. And the professor went, okay, Mr. Tortorich, what's up? I said, on November 8th, you said fat was the most important macronutrient that the body can have. He goes, yeah, that's right. I said, but today you said our bodies need carbohydrates. He goes, yeah, that's right. And I said, so which is it? And he couldn't answer it. He didn't have an answer for me. So that was an early clue, even before I was at the lab with my friend Linda. And then I thought about what my great-grandmother from Italy would say. She would go, wait a minute. If you want to get some hips on you, you need to eat some pasta. So I started equating pasta and bread with, you know, because old Italian grandmothers, you're not healthy unless you got a little girth. Right? By the way, your mic is off. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, no, I'm totally doing that in case my dog barks. Sorry, I should have told you before.
Okay. Because I saw you laughing. It's like, I see her laughing, but I can't hear her laughing.
Every time I laugh, I take the camera off of you. So I wanted to stay on you. But you're hilarious. So I'm laughing the whole time. But your grandmother knew right, clearly.
So Mama Virginia, she knew exactly what was going on. You know, she was like, hey, you know, some of these skinny girls you bring around here, give them some bread. Give them some bread. I'm like, Grandma, I want to keep them skinny. I kind of like the look, you know, but not my old Italian. She was from the old country. You know, you want to be healthy? she grew up before the Depression. You know, you want to be healthy, you got to look like this, right? So that's what happened there, you know, and so all of these clues were kind of piling into my brain. And then I want to say it was the early 90s. Somewhere I read something, you know, I was following Atkins, and I saw something on longevity, and there was no computer back then. And they were talking about, you know, longevity, you want to eat more fat and less sugar, and this longevity society. And then I was reading all this Atkins stuff, and I was like, this guy might have a point. And I've been reading a lot of this. And then I found something that Stephen Finney wrote. And these were all early adapters to this. And then I started adapting it with my clients, and it seemed to work. So that's the story.
That's amazing. It's crazy how impactful our health is. What we eat is impactful onto our health, and we don't even realize it. It's crazy, but it seems like you figured it out and then started making a difference, which is awesome. So we'd love to hear about how your current way of eating, how it is you eat now, and how you started implementing it when you figured all this out.
Well, I would do it, you know, something you may not know about me, but I was pretty big in the ultra cycling community. You know, I was one of those guys. I started back in the late 80s, and, you know, early on when ultra sports, long before Zach Bitter was a thought in his parents' head at the time. And I love Zach. I know he and Sean do a lot of stuff together. And I try to get Zach on my podcast as often as possible because, like me, he was a PE teacher too. You know, we kind of came from that same world. And so I was doing these ultra sports, and I truly believed that the only way I can continue on was with sugar. But whenever my off season, because I would take 3 or 4 months off a year and just let my body, you know, when you ride a bike 17,000 miles a year, that's more than most people put on a car. You know, your body needs a break. And so what I would do is I would take time off. And in order not to put weight on, the day I would get off of my bike, I would continue to stretch. I would go back to weightlifting. I would do all that. I would cut out all the gels and goos. Ice cream was not, if I had some in my freezer, I would either finish it or throw it out. Wouldn't buy pasta. I would go back to a more meat-heavy diet. And for those 3 or 4 months every year, it would start around October-ish. I would start out, and I would always make the joke. But when you make a joke, but you're listening to your joke, it's not really a joke. You're saying it out loud to your friends, but it's not a joke. And I would go, wow, I look healthier and I'm leaner when I get off of the bike because I'm eating more meat, chicken, fish, you know, eggs, all that stuff.
Wow.
And I was only doing that to keep myself lean. So when I got back on a bike in January, I wasn't carrying, a lot of cyclists will put on 15 or 20 pounds in the off season. I wanted to go back in, right now I weigh 170. I would go back in 162, 163, you know, just lean and cut, more cut than I would be during the bike season. And at some point, before I even had cancer, I would try to make it all the way through January when I was doing the light miles, and part of February eating as little pasta as I can, not eating a lot of goo and all that on the bike, because in those months I would only put like 800 or 1,000 miles on the bike, and the rides were short enough to where I was living on meat and trying to fuel myself with fat. You know, it was cold enough in those months I could put cheese in my back pocket and it wouldn't get hot, and you know. But by the time in California, by the time, you know, March would come, I would be right back into no cheese because it would get hot, no cold cuts because they would get hot. I'm squirting goo in my mouth on the ride. I would get off the ride, you know, I would go get a bowl of pasta. I would have less meat, more pasta. And that's when the inflammation would start. So that's what happened there. It was just kind of let's see how long I can do this, until I went, okay, my professor was right. I need the pasta, and by the way, I would still eat clean. I wouldn't go eat a ton of ice cream. I've never had junk. I'm not a junk food guy. So it was rice and pasta, still eggs in the morning for breakfast and that kind of deal. I was never like a cereal guy and all that kind of stuff. But still, the inflammation would start with that. And it was noticeable. Yeah.
Wow. So when did you decide to start just cutting them out completely?
I had cancer in 2007, leukemia. I'm lucky to be here. And when I was done, when you live in California and you go through cancer, two things happen. Every friend that came to visit me brought marijuana. And they said, hey, this is good for cancer. You need cannabis for cancer. I had never smoked a joint in my life. I've never had an illicit drug in my life. And I accepted it and thanked them. And by the time I was done with my cancer, I had a bag of probably a distribution amount of pot that just went unused. And I literally asked one of my friends, I said, does pot go bad, or how does this work? I don't really know how pot works. And he was like, no, why? I said, I got 20 different strands of sativa sitting at home. I don't even know what they are. And he said, well, I'll take some of it off your hands.
No problem.
Yeah, I gave some to him. And there was this girl who, we were on again, off again for a lot of years. And I knew she liked to, smoke a little pot. And I was going over one night to get laid. And that was back when you could just go over and get laid. And this was pre-falling in love with Serena, obviously. And I went, I think she likes pot. And I brought some to her. And when I got there, because she had known me back in New Orleans, I've known this woman for years. We're like old friends. And I brought it over and she started laughing. And I said, what's so funny? She goes, this has got to be a pound of pot. And I said, well, should I give some to someone else? Is it going to go bad? Like, I'm not naive about drugs, right? She goes, no, this is a distribution amount. Had you got caught on the way here, you would have spent time in jail. And I was like, well, now it's your distribution amount of pot, right? So, after I got rid of all my pot, all of my other friends in California were saying, you need to be on a juice diet. You need to have 6 and 8 ounces of wheatgrass a day. You need to have a macro. You need to be vegan, all this kind of stuff. And the one thing I knew for certain was there was no way in hell I could drink more than 1 ounce of wheatgrass a day, because you drink an ounce of wheatgrass, you're burping for a month, and the burps get worse as the day goes on. And I'm sitting there going, 8 ounces of this shit? Nah, I don't think so. So I asked my doctor, my cancer specialist, who was a hematologist, I said, is there any truth behind any of this with cancer? And she said, aren't you the no sugars, no grains guy? I said, yeah. She said, yeah, do that. And this was in 2007. And I said to her, really? She goes, yeah, the stuff, you'll start seeing it in a few years. She goes, I'm at the ground floor of, they're seeing where sugar really lights up cancer. And you want to stay away from sugar. So I did one more season, because if you read my book, Fitness Confidential, there was a race I had never completed, and I wanted to do one more season on the bike. So I did that season, and I used sugar on the bike only. I started cutting it out in the rest of my life. I was eating more meat at night. I was eating more eggs for breakfast, more meat for lunch, and really cutting the pasta and the rice down to a minimum. I was in my 40s. I was having my best cycling season ever. I started calling meat the poor man's EPO. I felt like I was taking a drug. It was like, why wasn't I doing more of this before? And it turned out I was able to eat all the meat I wanted, and I got stronger and stronger. And that was the big change for me. And that's when I said, after this cycling season, after I complete the Furnace Creek 508, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's what I did. And that's when I wrote the book.
Wow. Wow, that sounds so powerful. I mean, meat is clearly a powerful way to take care of yourself and maintain top health. Did you experience any difficulty when you finally decided to take out the grain fully? Or
yeah, the same difficulties I found every October whenever I would cut the grains.
okay.
I would get one bout of, or sometimes two bouts of constipation, because I was coming off of, when your body, as I call it, your digestive tract gets lazy, because when you have all this extra fiber pushing everything through, your colon doesn't work as a colon anymore.
Right.
I would get one bout of constipation, and then that would go away. And, there would be that, as you know, your body goes into flux and there's more acidity at first and the whole thing. So I would have that 3 or 4 days where I'm waking up all hours of the night, peeing out all this inflammation. And then I was fine. And then when I went on to eat like this at the end of that season, it was like every other season. Oh, here's my constipation. Here's my peeing all night. Now I feel, it's almost like your body goes, and
yeah,
it was that. And, whenever I go to Italy, and I would be, my sister-in-law is a famous actress, and she's got a lot of money, so she loves really fine wine. And whenever I would be with her, I would go, oh my gosh, she's got this great wine. I would drink wine, and I would eat some ice cream, and then my body would go, and, for that week or so when I was in Italy, that would happen. And then I would get back, or even I wouldn't even wait till I got back. As soon as my sister-in-law wasn't in my sight anymore, I would go, And, the rest of the trip would just be, by the time I was on the airplane, it would be fine again, and it really became that for me, and that's the way I live my life, and it's perfect.
That's beautiful. That's great. It's crazy how there's pressure that comes from outside that actually gets us away from that relaxation that you're describing. Because it's true, when you're eating that way, that your body relaxes, and as soon as you put it back in, it's overwhelming. So it's amazing. So can you share with us, overall, since you've been eating like that for so long, what was the impact in your life as a whole? I mean, apart from the fact that you've impacted so many in letting us all know about this, how has this way of eating impacted you overall, and your health, of course?
I'm going to give you 3 major impacts.
Okay.
Number one, the first 2 are personal, and the third one is not so personal. I was talking to Sean. He knew about my shoulder surgery, this real radical ream and run surgery, where you're supposed to be on heavy Class C narcotics, for 6 months. That went away in 10 days. On the 11th day, I took a Tylenol, and that was it.
Wow.
And I healed faster. The doctor said we've never had this kind of healing process ever.
That's beautiful.
I was told that when they knocked my leukemia into remission, the type of leukemia I had, they said, will come back in 5 years. I said, well, what's the longest anyone's gone? They said there's been some outliers that have gone 8 and 9 years. But the general consensus is if you go 4 years, you've beaten the curve. If you've gone 5 years, that's probably when you'll be back on chemo. I was cleared of cancer in 2008. That's 12 years, and I haven't had chemo yet.
Wow.
And nobody is studying me, by the way. No one's going, wait a minute, we now have a guy at 12 years. Should we not be looking at that guy and seeing what he's doing? But it's neither here nor there. So something I was supposed to be on chemo for 7 years ago, I'm still rolling along. So that's two personal things. The one that's not so personal that I take great pride in was that I had the balls to go online and write the book, write Fitness Confidential, put out a podcast that I knew would not be popular, that now gets over 1 million downloads a month, to do the movie and get yelled at about that became a big deal. And people go, well, why did you do all that? And it's like, because I was encouraged by, people I saw in that group that Sean, I saw Brett Lloyd and all these other people that I see around everywhere, right? And people go, why do you keep doing this? Go, because of the people that I've been able to help, that Sean Baker's been able to help, that Zach Bitters has been able to help, that Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek and Verta Health has created, giving my friends like Gary Taubes and Nina Teichels and Eric Westman a bigger platform to put the message out there, to help, and work with people like Ivor Cummins and Dave Feldman and Brett Shear and all of these amazing people, and when you go to my Friday show, I do 5 shows a week, the powers that be that come onto that show, and they're helping people. And by the way, nobody's getting paid. Nobody's making a dime, right? And, that when you look at that and go, yeah, history is going to shine upon us and go, these guys were mavericks. Eric Westman is a maverick. His girlfriend Amy is a maverick. Gary Fetke and Belinda Fetke, mavericks. The guy over in Finland who was in my movie, I can't think of his name right now, maverick. DietDoctor.com. Help me with his name. All of them. Just mavericks, and on and on and on. Peter Pardini for doing the movie. The guy has to live in Hollywood where there's a lot of vegans. Maverick. And I hope that history looks at us and go, yeah, those guys were there at the beginning when everyone was crapping on them, saying that they're killing people, and saying, oh, Sean Baker's an outlier. He's taking steroids, which is bullshit. You can go on and on and on. It's all crazy. And I just hope that's the message that lives. I really do.
Wow. Wow, Vinnie, first of all, your 2 personal examples are tremendous and such a blessing. And I really wish they would start studying you, because it would make such a difference for so many people. And just such a blessing. Good for you. I'm so glad that you've stayed out of chemo and stayed well. And your last example, as I said, you've had a huge impact in bringing together all those people, as you said, not only on your podcast, but in that film. Amazing. I'm sorry I couldn't bring his name to mind either, but also the Diet Doctor, he's amazing.
Andreas Ian Felt, it just came to me. I was picturing him and I couldn't think of his name because what he's doing is so important. And by the way, Zoe Harcombe and Tim Noakes and all of these people that Tim Noakes went through 2 trials in South Africa for telling a mom to give the kid vegetables and meat. 2 trials, billions of dollars was spent on that, and he was cleared twice, and they're still going after him.
It's insane. Pure insanity. That's one of the worst stories out there. But the Fetkes also, all the people that you've brought to us, that you've brought together. You named the list of every person who's inspired me and my health personally, never mind many, many others. So, just thank you. Your work is amazing and such a blessing, your life and what you've done. Thank you for sharing your story. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you'd like to share about your story, or anything else you'd like to let people know for those who are considering a fat burning?
Yeah, I just want to say it's not my work, because I don't do work.
Okay.
I just shine a light on these people who are actually doing the work. It's the doctors, it's the Sean Bakers and Brian Linskas and Trokalasians, and the Noakes and the Fetkes, and those are the people doing the work. I'm just the guy shining the light on them. So I'm not a hero in this whole thing. I'm just going, hey, look at these people, what he said. So,
I hear you, but you've got to take some credit because you still put this together. Pulling together is a huge thing. So, okay, I give it to you. You're right that maybe it's not your work that's making the big difference, but the fact that you're pulling everybody together, and yeah, I'm sorry, but saying no sugar, no grains, that's a pretty big deal. So you've had your impact, but let's not argue about your impact. Either way, it's great to give credit to others.
It drives me crazy because, I was talking about this, I think, on Sean's show. I was talking to Robin Switzer earlier today, and they had to cancel KetoCon and this kind of thing. And she was going, yeah, people came after us and said, they're calling us KetoCon. And it's like, really? All you and Brian Williams ever tried to do was fucking help people. What are we doing? What are we doing? Come on, these people, they're not getting rich. Robin Williams, Robin Switzer, not Robin Williams. That is funny. If Robin would have married Brian Williams, Robin Williams. Never thought of that before. I got to call her after this. But if people think she's getting rich off of doing this, the woman lives with her husband in a small apartment in Florida. She's not living in a mansion off of any. None of us are getting rich off of this stuff. We're just trying to help people. And that's what people have to realize about all of this.
I think that's a really important point that you made, and I'm glad you brought it up again because, yeah, nobody's being paid for this, and everybody's working overtime just to get the word out there so we can become healthier, like as a planet, because we need it.
Yeah, you're not getting rich off of this, are you, Amanda?
Oh, no. I mean, I would say I'm getting rich in the sense that my health is better, which is everything. I mean, that is what wealth is all about, isn't it? But apart from that, financially, not at all.
Look, folks, I can tell you, if you're not watching this visually, her set is, she's got a radiator behind her. There's no fancy set here.
Nope. My basement apartment in Toronto.
Yeah. And you got to love that. I mean, look at my set. I don't even know what's behind me. But, curtain behind me. But yeah, nobody's getting rich off of any of this stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much. It's been so great, a great laugh, but also just super inspiring. And we're just so grateful that you came. It was great having you on Sean's show and great to hear about your diet success story. So thank you for sharing your insightful story. Thanks for coming, Vinnie Tortorich.